The story of Adam and Eve is one of the foundational narratives of the Bible, found in Genesis 2, verse 4 to 3:24. It tells how God created the first human beings, their life in the Garden of Eden, and the eventual fall from grace that led to the introduction of sin and death into the world. Here's a detailed account of the story. Chapter 1. The creation of Adam. In Genesis 2:7, God formed the first man, Adam, from the dust of the ground. God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and Adam became a living being. He was different from all other creatures because God created him in his own image, with the ability to think, reason, and make choices. After creating Adam, God planted a special garden called the Garden of Eden in the east. The garden was filled with beautiful trees and plants that bore fruit, including the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Adam's life in the Garden of Eden. God placed Adam in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it. In Genesis 2:6-17, God gave Adam a specific command. You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. For when you eat from it, you will certainly die. Adam was given the freedom to enjoy everything in the garden, but with one restriction: he must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The creation of Eve. God saw that it was not good for Adam to be alone, so he decided to create a suitable companion for him. God brought all the animals to Adam, and Adam gave them names, but none of them were a suitable helper for him. In Genesis 2:21-22, God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep, and while he was sleeping, God took one of Adam's ribs and used it to form the first woman, Eve. When Adam saw her, he said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man." Adam and Eve were now husband and wife, and they were both naked but felt no shame. The serpent and the fall of man. In Genesis 3, a cunning serpent appears in the garden. This serpent, often understood as a representation of Satan, tempts Eve to eat from the forbidden tree. The serpent challenges God's command, saying, "You will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Genesis 3:4-5. Eve sees that the fruit of the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eye and desirable for gaining wisdom. She takes some of the fruit and eats it, and then gives some to Adam, who also eats. Sure 5. The consequences of disobedience. As soon as Adam and Eve ate the fruit, their eyes were opened, and they realized they were naked. Feeling ashamed, they sewed fig leaves together to make coverings for themselves. When they heard the sound of God walking in the garden, they hid among the trees. God called out to Adam, "Where are you?" Genesis 3:9. Adam responded by explaining that he was afraid because he was naked. God asked if they had eaten from the forbidden tree, and Adam blamed Eve, while Eve blamed the serpent. 6. God's judgment. As a result of their disobedience, God pronounced curses on the serpent, the woman, and the man. The serpent. God cursed the serpent to crawl on its belly and eat dust. He also declared that there would be enmity between the serpent and the woman, and between their offspring. This prophecy is often seen as the first promise of a future Redeemer, Genesis 3:15. Eve. God said that she would experience increased pain in childbirth, and that her desire would be for her husband, but he would rule over her. Adam. God cursed the ground because of Adam, meaning that Adam would have to toil and work hard to produce food. The ground would now produce thorns and thistles, and Adam would return to the dust upon death, marking the introduction of mortality. 7. Expulsion from the Garden of Eden. God made garments of skin for Adam and Eve to clothe them. But because they had disobeyed, God said that they must not be allowed to eat from the tree of life and live forever in their sinful state. So he banished Adam and Eve from the Garden of Eden. In Genesis 3:24, God placed cherubim, angels, and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life, preventing Adam and Eve from returning to the garden. Significance of the story. The story of Adam and Eve is considered the origin of sin in Christian theology. It explains the human condition of sinfulness and the need for redemption, which is later fulfilled in the New Testament through Jesus Christ. It also highlights key themes like free will, temptation, disobedience, and the consequences of sin. This narrative has been interpreted in various ways across different religious traditions, but its core message emphasizes the relationship between humanity and God, the consequences of moral choices, and the introduction of both physical and spiritual death into the world.